Deuteronomy chapter 26, Moses' last words in his second talk to his people.
Chapter 26. Once you enter the land that God, your God, is giving you as an inheritance and take it over and settle down, you are to take some of all the first fruits of what you grow in the land that God, your God, is giving you. Put them in a basket and go to the place God, your God, sets apart for you to worship him. At that time, go to the priest who is there and say, I announce to God, your God, today that I have entered the land that God promised our ancestors that he'd give to us. The priest will take the basket from you and place it on the altar of God, your God. And there, in the presence of God, your God, you will recite, A wandering Aramean was my father. He went down to Egypt and sojourned there. He and just a handful of his brothers at first, but soon they became a great nation, mighty and many. The Egyptians abused and battered us in a cruel and savage slavery. We cried out to God, the God of our fathers. He listened to our voice. He saw our destitution, our trouble, our cruel plight. And God took us out of Egypt with his strong hand and long arm, terrible and great, with signs and miracle wonders. And he brought us to this place, gave us this land flowing with milk and honey. So here I am. I've brought the first fruits of what I've grown on this ground you gave me, O God. Then place it in the presence of God, your God. Prostrate yourselves in the presence of God, your God, and rejoice. Celebrate all the good things that God, your God, has given you and your family, you and the Levite and the foreigner who lives with you. Every third year, the year of the tithe, give 1/10 of your produce to the Levite, the foreigner, the orphan, and the widow, so that they may eat their fill in your cities. And then, in the presence of God, your God, say this, I have brought the sacred share. I've given it to the Levite, foreigner, orphan, and widow. What you commanded, I've done. I haven't detoured around your commands. I haven't forgotten a single one. I haven't eaten from the sacred share while mourning. I haven't removed any of it while ritually unclean. I haven't used it in funeral feasts. I have listened obediently to the voice of God, my God. I have lived the way you commanded me. Look down from your holy house in heaven. Bless your people Israel and the ground you gave us, just as you promised our ancestors you would, this land flowing with milk and honey.
Last week, Major Janet Fuqua said, remember, they didn't have this. So it's important that it be repeated. And I wonder how they remembered this when they got into the land. But hopefully someone was responsible for instructing to make sure that it was remembered. Because now we have it and you can say it frequently, recently recite it, but at that point it is basically a recall. The spirit of the speech is probably more important than the letter of the speech if you don't have it documented. But hearing no conversation about that, we'll move on. Initially, I was going to segue in by asking if you had any fond memories of harvest time, but I don't know that will be a useful question now. But if someone thinks, yeah, I can tell you a story about harvest time, that would elucidate us and bring us to a closer understanding of how we need to be thankful at harvest time. If anyone has a nice story they want to share. I grew up rural, so I was happy to... In those days, I wasn't happy about it. But now that I look back, I'm so glad that I had that experience of growing up rural with sheep and goats and cows and all kinds of animals, and chores. You had to get up in the morning and do. And I appreciate it now. It's painful.
Harvest Festival was pretty big, especially the Harvest Festival auction that was held in the court. I remember we had to visit farms around, meet the farmer, and ask for them to help us. That's quite a task. And every year we did that. And that sticks in my mind as you speak. Going around to the farmers, asking for food, then using it as a fundraiser for our ministry. Big deal.
But what about the experience of people gathering together and thinking about harvest? Was that part of it as well? Not just the receiving it to auction, but the assembling together. Was that meaningful? Did people appreciate that?
I think so. I believe so. I also remember adding a visit to the Oyster Corps in Barbados for a harvest festival where the kids just took over. It was wonderful.
The whole league was selling cherry wine.
Okay, we're on this side. Somebody wants to comment?
In the small corps we were at, the people would go out to the farms and to the grocers and around, and they would bring it in. So they were all participating in this, and then of course they were all paying to buy it back to help the corps through the auction. And the neighborhood would come in. It was a big deal in the small community where we were.
I hear participate. I hear community. These are good things. You might not be thinking about it actively, but when you come to an assembly, it's put in your presence, and the awareness comes to you. The food did not grow in the grocery store. There were farms and there were farmers, and sometimes things would go wrong and the crop would not succeed. Remember that comment I was trying to read earlier? I said that 7 cents out of every dollar spent on food goes back to the farm. Did you find that shocking, surprising? In the United States economy, GDP, agriculture is 1%. 1%. 99% of our economic activity is not agriculture. Is that shocking? That's part of the reason why we get rid of the section on harvest, because it's like, okay, what does that mean to us? All right. Yes.
I didn't grow up on a farm, but I remember my grandparents had a little plot of land. And they always, we always ate the produce from that, and it was really great. But what I was thinking of as a city person and having my own garden many years, how exciting it is to get the first tomato, those green beans. And I was so thankful, you see that and it growing, and then you get to eat it. It's wonderful. Yes. I mean, it's such a blessing.
The appreciation for the cycle of life.
Does. And the plants that he gave us to enjoy. It's a blessing.
All right, back to our scripture passage. I said, why do you think the children of Israel were given this instruction, or these instructions in our passage, so far in advance? In hindsight, not that far in advance. They were about to go into the land, but they needed to get it. So does anyone want to even tackle the question?
To give God your best.
So the timing, Moses told them before they got into the land, and then Moses didn't go with them. Here's what you need to do when you get into the promised land. And hopefully they actually fulfilled on that. There was something about first fruits in that passage. It says in the first verse, it says, you're to take some of all the first fruits of what you grow in the land and put them in a basket and go to the place God sets apart for you to worship Him. I'm not Jewish enough to answer this, but I suspect that individual families had this charge. Put in the basket, and you go represent your family before the priest and say what is being said here. So everybody had to be familiar with what to say when they came into the presence of the priest to give this offering of first fruits. Does anyone have an understanding? Yes, go ahead.
My commentary said that offering of the first of the harvest to God was a testimony of His faithfulness as an expression of gratitude for the good harvest and as a sign of their confidence in a good harvest to come.
Confidence. Yes. Yeah. The first harvest was early, long before, like a spring harvest. Yes.
And my commentary says this section deals with one's attitude in giving an offering of first fruits and the tithe. It teaches that both should be given with an attitude of joyful worship as a testimony to God's personal provision and deliverance.
I have further that says that this first fruits was different than the annual first fruits. this was the first fruits of the land. And that it was different because this was the first time that they were ever harvesting. And it was therefore a little bit more important to give that.
Excellent. So this is a one-time thing. This is not an annual thing. This is a one-time thing. Your first harvest, the first fruit, you come and to the place that has been ordained, and you make this offering. Mary.
I don't know if the Bible just said this, and I wasn't. My Bible says to give the first of all that they produced from the soil of the land was an act of faith, because they didn't know how much more they were going to get. So they could have been giving everything.
So put yourself in their place. We've just come into this land.
Everything.
Obviously, they had to do some fighting and settling before they settled. And now they're planting. And the very first crop you plant, this is what this is about. The very first crop you plant. So imagine being in a new house or a new appointment. A first experience, something you'll do once but not necessarily repeat. Okay? So this needs to happen. So in a new relationship, a new situation, there's something you're going to do once, the first time. And you're going to make that first time special. That's what this was. Anyone want to respond or comment?
There's a repetition, though, constantly in this. The Lord your God is giving you. The Lord your God is giving you. And it's a reminder that it wasn't just a planting. It was because the Lord your God planted you here and is blessing you.
Okay. Anyone else?
I think you said it in that part. You said the first time you're going to do it, right? It's what you're building your foundation on. If you don't build it correctly, you build it with bad intentions, right? And growing up, we had the song in Spanish. I don't know if it's in English, but the song says, "The Lord blesses the cheerful giver. Yes, He gives blessing. The Bible says it is true." This is roughly translating, but we still always sing that as a little kid, and I sing it with the girls. If we're not giving hilariously, as some people say, joyfully, and if that's not the foundation of why we give because He's blessed us, then it's building a lie. And once that little lie creeps in, it's going to infest, and one bad apple will lose the whole harvest.
So I need you to think about new things, how you treat them the very first couple of times as you try to understand this. So think of something new in your life and how you treat it so specially. As a student, you get a new exercise book to write, and you write nicely on the first page. You care for it. By the end of the book, it's like, I don't care anymore. My wife said something a couple of weeks ago that her professor said, start with the end in mind.
No,
start the way you want to finish. Start the way you want to finish. So you set it correctly. It might not always go the way you want, but have that desire. Here's how I want it to finish, so this is how I'm going to start it. I'm not going to come in raggedy. I'm going to make it look really organized. I'm going to make it the best I can. And that's the mindset here. Your very first crop, your very first harvest, treat it special. One generation gets to do that. The other generations don't get to do that first thing anymore. They get to do their own thing. But this one was an offering of thanksgiving to God, because what had He done? He helped you to sustain yourself for 40 years in the wilderness. And now He's giving you the promise. I don't want to say show some gratitude. It sounds crude, but make sure you're grateful. You're now a settled people. You're no longer wandering and wandering. You're now settled. God has shown you He's going to give you the land. He's kept His promise. And show that you're grateful for this. Okay, so that's my introduction. Question number 4. From all of their harvest, what were they to bring as the first fruits to the priests?
The first of the crops to ripen.
First of the crops to ripen. They were supposed to put it in a basket. I don't know how big the basket was, so it would be a variety. Put it in the basket. Go to the place where the Lord had designated, and then you will recite this particular passage here. I'm intrigued by the opening verses of opening words of verse 5. In the translation I use, it says, a wandering Armenian was my father. I think the King James says Syrian. And if you go back to when Jacob went to Laban, his uncle, it said he was a Syrian. And therefore, that's why he says he's wandering, because his mother was Syrian. And he is basically acknowledged that. The adjective is wandering. And wandering has several connotations. You know how language evolves. Wandering might seem like you wander from place to place. But there's some translation that says wandering means he's poor. He's destitute. So what's the context for him being a wandering Armenian or wandering Syrian as he begins this acknowledgement before God? Take a look at that passage, verse 5. See if you can figure out what he meant when he says he was a wandering Aramean, a wandering Aramean. Or maybe your commentary can help. Why did he go down to Egypt? That's the answer to the question.
He was hungry.
He was hungry. So more generically, what was happening in the land?
Famine.
It was famine. That's why he is a wandering Aramean. Because there's nothing here. You need to find somewhere. He says, a wandering Aramean was my father, Jacob, went to Egypt and sojourned there. Handful of brothers. They became a great nation, mighty and many. And then we get into the unpleasant stuff about what the Egyptians did. Any comment or commentary? All right, let's keep moving. So as you look at that passage, verses 5 through 9, I ask, why is remembering, because basically that's what they're doing, they're acknowledging what has happened. Why is remembering important?
Remember how bad things used to be.
Or good. Why is remembering important?
If you don't remember your history, you're more likely to repeat it. If it's there.
Remember what
You
all
don't
the
get
Lord
lost.
did for them. The Lord took them out of slavery. You're not a slave anymore. You are free men and women, but don't forget why you are free and who took care of you.
I think though when we read that they did always forget what the Lord did for them. You know what I mean? Because they all, we want the calf, we want this, we want, all the blessings that the Lord had given them was a distant and wasn't in the front of their mind.
So I'm going to be sympathetic, Al. 40 years. It's a long time. 40 years of wandering is a long time. Wandering and wandering. So I grumble occasionally. Maybe you don't. So I'm going to be more sympathetic to them in this particular context, because God still loved them in spite of all of this grumbling. Yes, a few things didn't happen. Moses didn't get to go into the land, and the generation that left Egypt didn't go into the land, but God still had this love for them to make sure that they were cared for, even if he had to discipline them in some ways. Yes?
Yeah, but, it's good to be sympathetic because they're just like us. At the same time, they are in the constant face of miracles and supernatural events that would be mind-boggling, even if they were on a smaller scale in our own lives. And so I think the history that Al is bringing up and the grumbling, I think it's an act of grace of the Lord not making them repeat in this thing. And we grumbled, and we didn't obey, and we didn't like what you did, and we complained about the manna, and we, all of that. He's focusing on what he did for them. But the fact that they didn't grumble, the fact that they complained, the fact that they were smitten, smote, whatever the word is, the Lord had to kill them off here and there. Smitten, whatever that word is. The fact that they have this history with the Lord, where there is still that grumbling, I think that makes what they're saying now even more powerful. Because he's saying, this is what we're going to focus on. All that is now in the past, but now we're going to focus on this.
There was enough of them to keep God in their faith. I mean, to tell their children
Yeah.
and then their children. I mean, they weren't all bad. They couldn't have been all bad. We all grumble, just like you said. I
Grumble on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Grumble on Thursday, Tuesday. Grumble on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Grumble on
the word is spreading with them. You know, they're taking their kids to Sunday school. They're teaching them about God. Now, these people, I'm just saying, you know, but they're spreading the word. They're keeping God in their lives. There's enough of them to do that. That they're not all. I mean, anyway.
Major Jean.
Question 6,
Yes.
remembering one's history important. I have a book that's built around this principle. How you remember your past determines how you live your future. I like that. Does that make sense?
It does.
That's the name of the book?
Anyone else?
I think that makes the point I was making, which is, this is what the Lord says, this is what we're pulling forward. All of that in the past. If there's nothing else you're going to remember about this experience you just had, this is it.
Yeah, and I agree with Mary. Remembering history is important. So me and my children will live and love the Lord.
You're going to do it every week, right? 3 weeks in a row. So,
Because I know you don't.
all this brought to mind a poem by Christina Rossetti called Remember. I don't know if you've seen that poem. She's telling her loved ones to remember her. Then at the end she says, but if it's too painful to remember, you're going to be sad. Just forget and be happy. Interesting twist of things. But she wants them to remember, but she said, it's going to be too painful. And I think of that in my own life, how occasionally I remember important people. And much of the time it's so sad, I just figure, okay, put it out of my mind and cherish the memory when you have it, but set it aside because of the anxiety, yes.
My daughter's given me a book called Tell Me Everything. And it has 100 questions. And it's basically how I feel about life, different aspects of life. And in it, I'm recording things about my parents. So she can remember them and their ideals as well as my ideals. So that it's recorded for the future. And it's difficult to go through all those questions because they're really soul searching. But I'm trying to be as honest as I possibly can. But it's also making me remember my childhood. Because the questions ask about your childhood. So remembering those things, some memories are painful, some memories are wonderful. I was blessed with a wonderful family. But growing up and going out on my own, that's when the bad stuff happened. But I guess it's important to the next generation to know about us and our past and their past.
That would be something just for us to do and hand it. There's so many kids and they don't care. I mean, right now they don't care. Me, when I was a kid, I didn't ask my dad questions. I didn't, I could. But later on in life, after I raised my kids, that's when I wanted to know about Daddy, about his life, about my,
And for different people, there's different seasons too. You're not always ready to receive some of the pain, so you postpone it to when you are emotionally stronger, more mature, when you've gone through stuff. And as you share things with your children, they don't always get it.
Right.
And then later say, oh yeah, that's what that meant.
Yeah.
There's also something called an ethical will. And we did this for a lot of people at the legal aid clinic. It's not legal, but It started off in the concentration camps when the people were desperate and they wanted to leave their children not with material things but ethical things. And they would write these things on the walls, telling their children and grandchildren what was important to them in their lives. So, I mean, I can hand those out, but they're really simple to do. They're not 100 questions. But I think it's important for future generations to remember their family members and what was important to them and see how it impacts their lives.
But you still want to cherry pick because some of the stuff is painful and you might not be ready for it.
I think that's part of the problem of today's generation, that we're getting rid of all our history. And it's like I always say, you cannot repeat history if you don't know what history was. You know, and that's the trouble. I mean, we look at the Holocaust. I have a hard time that people don't believe that the Holocaust happened. You know what I mean? When that many people were killed, you know what I mean? And we're doing that more and more today, forgetting our past. And I believe that you can't move forward if you forget your past.
Question number 7, I say after the recitation, they were supposed to do something in verse 10, and I'll just read the verse. It says, place it in the presence of God your God, bow low in the presence of God. So that's what they were supposed to do. So what does that bowing low represent?
Reverence.
Reverence.
Humility.
Humility.
My commentary says the Hebrew word is shaka, which means to bow, to stoop, to bow down before someone as an act of submission or reverence, to worship, to fall or bow down when paying homage to God. The primary meaning is to make oneself low. And so, make yourself low.
Question number 8. How did this become a testimony for those who knew and followed God as well as those who did not? Verse 11. What were they supposed to do? It says, rejoice, celebrate all the good things that God has given you and your family, you and the Levite, and the foreigner who lives with you. How did this become a testimony to those who knew and followed God? Your act of first fruits and your act of the way you enter the presence of God. How does it testify to others?
You saw them rejoice.
Mm-hmm.
What you looking for? That part?
I'm more going for the fact that if the people around you, your children, etc., see you worshiping God,
Oh,
you're an example.
that
And they can say, well, the parents honor the Lord, and therefore
Yeah.
it's part of their history. Even if they choose not to.
Yeah, but you drop the seed.
You plant the seed. You live your testimony in front of them, and you show that you're thankful, and you show humility and in the presence of God. Anyone else wants to comment? An idea comes to your mind? Okay. Let's get going. Question number 9. Deuteronomy 14:22. The people are instructed to be sure to set aside 1/10 of all your fields produce each year. In these verses, to whom is this to be given, and with whom should it be shared? As you look at verse 11 again. To whom was it to be given, and with whom was it to be shared? So somebody wants to elaborate on that, explain what's going on here?
Well, they had their own little Salvation Army back then.
That's true.
People would give all their stuff to them, and then they would distribute it to the Levites, foreigners, orphans, and widows.
More seriously,
They had to have some way of distributing it.
To the
So
people that didn't
they couldn't just, oh, wait, there's a foreigner. Wait, stop, I gotta give you something. There would have been something in place in that year so that they could distribute their tenth that they needed to distribute.
so I want to rewind a little bit. Remember where they are. They're about to enter the land. And Moses is telling them, when you get into the land, this is what you need to do. Who's among them? As you think of the structure, remember, the older generation is gone. And if men die younger than women, or men marry younger women, a lot of widows. When both parents are gone, orphans. So in that population that was going to enter the land, there were widows. There were orphans. And because those who left Egypt was a mixed multitude, it wasn't just Jews. Others came with them. Also be kind to foreigners, people who joined with you, because when you were in Egypt, you were a foreigner. God was faithful to you, so they're told to be generous with foreigners. So foreigners, widows, orphans. That was the litany of the group they were supposed to pay attention to. When they enter the land, don't forget. Because sometimes you might hang out with someone, and when you get to your destination, out of sight, out of mind. They're coming with you. The same way you're paying attention to them now as we huddle around whatever camp here. When you get into the land, don't forget the widows, the orphans, and the foreigners, the strangers.
It also says the Levites. The Levites living in your towns, for they have no allotment or inheritance of their own.
Because the Levites weren't given any land.
Right.
Salvation. So make sure that you are caring beyond just me. You're interested in the community. They lived in community for 40 years. Now they're going to be settled. Don't forget community. And it can happen. We think about each other here. We go to our separate ways. Do we think about each other? He's saying make sure that that's always present in your mind, how to be generous. So pay attention to people's needs, people's situations. Pray for them when you're absent from them, as opposed to when you're with them. Be a community. And remember those who need you.
It is the Jewish welfare system that Malachi refers to as the storehouse in 3:10. And it was indeed a formalized form of redistribution. In most cases, it was augmented by the act of gleaning, so that the olives were left at the highest levels, and the gleaners would not only receive from the storehouse, but they would be allowed to glean the olives from the top shelf.
Application in the dying moments. Application. I don't know what Thursday is going to be like for you. I don't want to ask you either. But if you think of what is being said here, will you remember the widows, the orphans, and the foreigner? In other words, people who are not part of your nuclear family, will you remember them? In some way, will you do something to make sure that they are not forgotten? Basically, those who are with us. Can you think about that as well? Also, as you give thanks, be thankful not only for yourself, but beyond. And be thankful because you've done something to reach out to others. Thank you to God for bringing it to my mind to be kind and helpful to others, as opposed to just thanking God for your table. Sorry, your hand? Yes.
I appreciate what Joel said, because I do give thanks a lot, but I don't know if I give thanks always with a grateful heart.
Bet you do.
So, what?
I don't know. Thanksgiving can be route. It can be. It can be. Thank you. Like, do you really mean that? What does it? What does it mean deep inside?
What's the result? What's the result of giving the tithe? God will pour out a blessing so much you can't contain it. Malachi 3:10.
Any other comment before we close? I was going to close with the doxology, praise God from whom all blessings flow.
We're singing it this morning.
Really? But I'm going to switch to something else. Yes.
I think Julie's point is well taken, which is maybe this Thanksgiving, as we settle down, don't let it be just a routine, but make it, when you get up on Thanksgiving morning, to really ask yourself, what am I thankful for? And Lord, help me. Give me the capacity, increase my capacity for gratefulness within my heart. So I think that that's a well taken point for 2025, and always. But we have a time to reflect and to pause as we move into this week.
I wanted to focus on humble, thankful hearts again, and I don't have that song there. that song says, we plow the fields and scatter the good seed on the land. It says, and what thou most desirest are humble, thankful hearts. I thought I had it, but I don't have it. But anyway, the reflection, I said, let us close with the chorus from Lord Thou Art Questioning, as we are asking the Lord. So the song says, the chorus says, all in my heart, Lord, thou canst read. Master, thou knowest I love thee indeed. Ask what thou wilt, my devotion to test. I will surrender the dearest and best. The idea that we are going to give him our best. And our best attitude as well. We're going to be grateful, and we're going to be thankful. And we're going to make sure that we include others in that Thanksgiving. Yes.
You know what I'm grateful for on Thanksgiving Day? The Green Bay Packers. My first appointment.
All good things for others are sent from God.
Rewind the lesson. Rewind the lesson.
Last comment, anybody?
Start over.
I'm wondering.
Yes. Ellen gets the last comment.
Well, if you get the last one, then I get to go before you.
Yeah, that's right. Go ahead.
I'm wondering if this still qualifies as my small group. We got more people here than my daughter's Packer congregation.
Yes, it does.
I was just going to say how blessed I am for everyone here, for our leaders, or facilitators, and how much I've learned. And I continue to thirst for more knowledge. And I feel so filled when I come to this class. So thank you.
All right, let's pray.